Hi everyone, welcome to the Architectural Association. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this last event in this term's public programme. We are so pleased to be joined tonight by Collective for Architecture Lebanon, who are going to speak about The Land Remembers in order to launch the official publication of this year's Lebanese Pavilion at the Venice Architecture Biennale that they curated. They're going to present, and after that, there'll be a chance for some questions from the audience. And the beautiful publication will be available to purchase at the back of the room over there at the end of the event, where we'll also have some drinks so conversations can continue more informally. So thank you to Aya and the wider team who made this event possible. And I'll hand over to Elias and Shireen. Thank you so much again for joining us and sharing the project tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tu peux amener le livre.
Oh, tu voulais amener le livre.
Oh, tu l'as amené? That's on. Okay. First of all, thanks for everyone who made it today. We really appreciate. I'm just going to start by introducing a bit Collective for Architecture, quickly some of the projects we have done, and of course the Lebanese Pavilion at the Biennale, the concept of it, and the publication. So to start with, Collective for Architecture is a registered NGO. We've been founded in 2019 as a multidisciplinary platform that operates between the fields of architecture, urban planning, economy, and the arts. As a collective, we usually have a network, and we expand our network according to the projects that we are working on. Talking about the projects that we are working on, we organized one of the biggest architecture forum in Lebanon, which was Ramadan 19, and published a book called Architecture of the Territory, which we did a book launch 2 years ago in this lecture hall for. And part of the activities that we do also is competitions. And this one was actually the competition for the Architecture Biennale in 2021. The theme was, how will we live together? We came with a proposal that was called 100 Years Online in 2019, which was about Lebanon celebrating its 100th anniversary, I would say, as a nation, but also really highlighting the problem of the social contract between the Lebanese citizens and the state. Not to go too much in detail, but in Lebanon, all the politics are based on a confessional system that was inherited from the French mandate. And this has led to extreme corruption and paralysis of the state institution. The government cannot function anymore because everything is attributed according to religious quotas between the 18 different religions of the country. So what we were doing is really kind of advocating that the system doesn't work anymore. It has led to massive corruption, and we were planning, or at least we were calling, we're very alarmist about the fact that we need to reform the system. Citizens need to be more engaged and participate more in the democratic process in Lebanon, because right now it has been completely hijacked by the confessional system. So part of that was to question, how does the state represent itself in front of its citizen, the social contract it has with its people. And part of the pavilion was to kind of launch this digital application that would call for more participatory democracy to really get the opinion of the states in Lebanon between what the citizens want and are advocating and what the state is doing. There's a massive gap. So the pavilion was a space made of 128 chairs, which is the number of seats at the Lebanese parliament. And there was this idea that you could move them around, create spaces where people would gather, isolate some others. So it was let's say this was a pre-concept because it was a competition that the state had organized. Unfortunately, we arrived second for this competition. We were running against 40 architecture practices in Lebanon. And the results were announced on the 16th of October. And one day after they announced the result of the Biennale, a revolution exploded in Lebanon. People went down to the street. For the first time, it was a small parenthesis in the history of the nation where all the communities came together to ask for a massive reform for the abolition of the confessional system. Unfortunately, this didn't last, and we went back to corruption and the confessional system. And back then, it was Hala Werde who got attributed the pavilion with her proposal called A Roof for Silence. So I just want to talk here a bit about Lebanon's representation at the Biennale. We haven't been very active as a nation at the Architecture Biennale, at least. We've participated only twice, in 2018 and 2021. Last edition, Lebanon was not participating, so there is really this lack of continuity. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you will see that for the architecture one, it's much more prominent. We participate much more. They have already announced the pavilion for 2026. So we kind of noticed that in Lebanon, architecture is not, let's say, a massive priority compared to art. And this goes in a long tradition of Lebanon being present at the international forum, because Lebanon has always prided itself as being like a sort of an alternative voice in a region that is often ruled by authoritarian regime that use a lot of censor, that really control everything that is cultural, while in Lebanon, for various reasons, one of them being the weakness of the state, culture is much more present, it's much more creative. We really pride ourselves as having a singular voice in the region. And I want to emphasize here a bit the 1939 pavilion at the New York Fair, which I'm going to talk about very quickly, but just to show how powerful the impact of a pavilion could and can be. So in 1939, Lebanon was still under French mandate, and back then there was massive negotiations within the country of the future of what Lebanon could be. Some wanted to be an independent state, others wanted it to be part of Greater Syria, so that Lebanon and Syria become one nation. Some wanted to be more Arab, others more Western, socialist, liberal. So there was really a kind of lack of, let's say, unified vision of what those 18 communities that live in Lebanon could be later on. So this is where a man called Charles Korum comes in place. He was basically the main distributor of Ford cars in the Middle East. And he went to meet Henry Ford in a meeting in New York, and he told him, I would like to distribute the Ford cars in Lebanon. Henry Ford replies to him, what is Lebanon? It doesn't exist. It's a biblical name, and I have no idea what that is. So Charles Korum got quite offended, according to his relatives that are still alive, and went on to make it a target for Lebanon to be represented at the 1939 New York City Fair. And back then, Lebanon didn't have much to offer in terms of innovation or technology, or wasn't even in theme with what was happening at the art fair. But it was just a statement that Lebanon is a nation, could become a nation. So when World War II would end, we existed as a nation to give us our independence. And that had a very big resonance on the international stage. It has a very powerful message. It presented the culture of Lebanon, who they are. It created a sort of, some would argue, fictional identity to Lebanon, but at least one that could unify the people towards independence. So for us, it was very important to continue this legacy of giving Lebanon a voice at the international scene, especially one like the Biennale, that is one of the biggest art and architecture events in the world. And our main message was that despite everything that is going on, despite the war that was going on in Lebanon, we were not going to be silenced, and we had to keep on going with bringing Lebanon's voice on the international stage. So for this year's Biennale, Lebanon didn't organize a competition for it because obviously it was very difficult times, the war was going on. So because we came in second at the last open call that the Ministry of Culture and the Order of Engineers and Architects organized, they called us back. They asked us to present a proposal. They asked us to do a sort of pre-concept, and a committee agreed on nominating us to represent Lebanon. But it's something that we initiated, not the state. This is very important because I will come back on this point later. This year's Biennale was curated by Carlo Ratti on 3 themes, which are natural, artificial, and collective intelligence. When we were kind of working on our concept, the war had already started in Lebanon. It was extremely difficult time. The Minister of Culture appointed us, saying that they would not be responsible for any of the funding that would go into the pavilion. And for those of you that don't know, the Biennale is extremely expensive. It's if you want to build a pavilion there, it's the size of it's the price of a flat in London. So we had a lot of difficulties to raise money, but thankfully we had some sponsors, some supporters that really believed in the message and that understood that despite the war going on, despite a lot of need in the humanitarian sector, culture should go on as well. So while the war was expanding more and more in Lebanon, and it was becoming more intense and more brutal, we noticed something extremely strange that was happening, especially in the south of the country. We started getting more and more of those images of white phosphorus being massively used on the territory. For those of you who are unfamiliar with white phosphorus, it's this weapon of war that initially is used to create a sort of cloud on the ground that would destabilize the enemy movement, or would create such a thick fog that it could paralyze everything on the ground. But the consequences of that is that it does contaminate the soils. It burns at 800 degrees, and it's, as you can see in the first picture, it is thrown on massive areas. The war started in Lebanon towards September, like the wider war at least, which is a very dry season. So the white phosphorus was thrown on the ground, and we noticed that the fires were more and more intense. And the problem with white phosphorus is that even if it's thrown on the ground, it can reignite at any time if it's in contact with oxygen. So even in a couple of years, it can burn again. And because of the amount of it that has been used, it has contaminated not only the soil, but the water table and whatsoever. So those are the kind of strange images that we started to get from the south of Lebanon, where we noticed more and more that it is nature that was targeted rather than specific military targets or urban centers as it has been usually done in the past. So here you can see the land has been burned, and it's the olive trees that were targeted more than anything else. And more we started getting not only videos of land that was burned, but images like those where trees were cut off along the roads for no apparent reasons. And I've only put 20 seconds of this video, but it goes on for 5-6 minutes of the entire trees on the road for no reason, just being cut off. So those are a bit more photos of different parts of the south that really got very heavily bombarded, but you can see that the urban parts are almost intact, and it's really the ground that is being, the land, the agriculture, the trees that are sometimes hundreds of years old that have been targeted. And this is where we started getting a bit of data as well from some NGOs that were doing work on the ground. And this is dated from, most of those articles are dated from November. And even back then, the amount of olive trees that were being burned and targeted was incomprehensible, and it was really strange. It was as if the war was happening against nature for some reason. So coming back to the brief of the Biennale, we couldn't ignore that dramatic problem that Lebanon was going through. So for us, going at the Biennale without talking about that was almost a missed opportunity, and it was almost like being next to the dramatic reality. So we kind of did a very bold move and decided to really take the ecocide that is going on in Lebanon and highlight this as the Lebanese contribution at the Biennale. And ecocide is, as you may know, the deliberate destruction of nature. So it's when you intentionally target nature. It's a new word that has, let's say, appeared in the vocabulary not a long time ago, derived from genocide and the killing of either humans or nature. And we argued that this is ecocide because of the enormous amount of white phosphorus that was used against the land, against the intentional fires that were being put out through all the Lebanese territory, and through all the heavy metals that resulted in the targeting of the land itself, which contaminated the heavy metals are even worse than white phosphorus for soil, water, and land contamination, which was something that Lebanese were very alarmed by, because it was the first time that the war has moved against nature. And as some of you may know, Lebanon's name comes from nature, from its white snow-capped mountain. There's the cedar on its flag. There's a cedar tree. So Lebanese people really have this attachment to the land. It is a land that has been invaded many times by many people that have suffered some of the most dramatic wars and massacres and famines of the 20th century. But people have such an attachment to the land that they always come back or they always stay. So we thought to bring that message to Venice and to understand that we should not only document what is happening and show that to the world, but we should also think about how can we heal the land for future generation, because we believe in our curatorial statement, we've included that the systematic erasure of Lebanon's ecology is not only an environmental crisis, it's an existential issue. Nature in Lebanon is very vulnerable, not only because of ecocide, but because of internal Lebanese policies that have gone to lack of urban planning, to corruption, to the lack of consideration for everything that is environmental, thinking that nature would always regenerate itself. So the nature is quite damaged in general in Lebanon. And this was almost like the nail on the coffin of the last dramatic or disastrous event that occurs in Lebanon. And I'm just gonna give the mic to Shireen, that is gonna introduce the pavilion and what it was about.
So, as you know, the pavilion is called The Land Remembers. And for the very simple reason that actually the land has memory, it knows how to heal itself, but it also remembers what has happened to it. So the way we try to convey the message in Venice is through this fictional ministry, the Ministry of Land Intelligens. And the main message of this ministry is that before architecture, there is land. And without healing the land, we can't think about rebuilding. The other thing the ministry is trying to say is that first of all, it's a sort of criticism on the state of Lebanon that has been very absent and not very concerned with what has been going on. And the second thing that the ministry is trying to do is to sort of criticize a bit the role of the architects, especially in Lebanon today, that is very concerned about rebuilding and reconstruction, but has very little interest in the land, but also has very little interest in sort of taking a more active role and having more agency, especially politically. And we think there's a place and there's a role for the architect to take. So the pavilion is actually, we've brought together different, as Elias was saying, we've brought together different organizations, architects, researchers, and writers that have been concerned with this question of ecocide and that have been working on this throughout the past years. And so this is the team of people that have presented their work at the pavilion. And the pavilion is the ministry is sort of divided into 4 departments. The Department of Ecocide Report, of Countermapping, Endemic Species, and Strategic Healing. And 2 of these departments are related to the documentation of the destruction of the natural environment, and 2 of them are related to strategies on how to heal the land. So we didn't really want to go to Venice and sort of be victims of this destruction, but we wanted to take the opportunity to sort of bring together the people that have been working and researching and finding ways on how to heal the land. And more specifically, when we talk about healing the land, especially in Lebanon, and when we talk about the environment, we're not coming from a Western point of view where a lot of the solutions are related to technological advances, but we're rather looking at things that are indigenous or sort of natural methods. And our concern is really, when we're talking about the environment, is about conflict and the environment rather than climate change, which is not a priority for us at the moment because of the urgency of this crisis. And so this is just a little diagram to show how the pavilion was sort of thought of. The 4 departments are represented through this cross, which is the main element of the pavilion. It's a table at the center of the space, dividing the space into the 4 departments. And you can see here that above the table, there are some fabrics hanging, and the table is made out of these sort of like earth bricks, and I'll get to that a bit later. This is actually the first department, and it's the Department of Ecocide Reports. The images you see here are images that have been taken with an iPhone by the firefighters who have been in southern Lebanon over the past year, trying to turn off the fires and pick up the white phosphorus and document what has been happening. So I'm just going to skip to that. So this is also a very striking photo, and this is not snow, it's ash. This photo was actually taken by a person called Usama, and Usama was the target of a Israeli drone attack on the 1st of May, a week before the opening of the pavilion. He took most of the photos and the videos that are shown in Venice at the pavilion. And that's, it tells you how important the work that he's been doing is. So these are other images that have been taken by, and actually Usama, sorry, I forgot to mention, he's part of an organization called Green Southerners, and together they've been providing us with all of this content to exhibit in Venice. Is this a video? No, sorry. So, and I'll talk about the book a bit later, but part of the things you can see at the exhibition are some elements that are on the table, and this is Laporello that documents a lot of the photographs that have been taken in South Lebanon. And actually what I want to say is that more than 50 million square meters of land has been burned. That includes agricultural land and orchards. Over 6,000 hectares have been poisoned. And one thing that the white phosphorus does is that it enters the water and then it gets disseminated through the whole land. And so it doesn't only affect the contact points, but it also affects all the greenhouses and all the crops that have been planted and now that are poisoned. And actually we also worked with one of the members of Green Southerners who also works with the American University in Beirut. And they don't know how long it's going to take to decontaminate the soil. So this is a study that they've been doing, and so there's a lot of uncertainty around this. And the second department is the Department of Counter Mapping, and counter mapping is a sort of rewriting of the narrative. And we've worked with organizations like Public Works Studio, who have been producing, actually I'm gonna stay on this one, who have been who have been producing maps showing the extent of the damage on the land, and this is showing southern Lebanon. And you can see here actually the strategy of Israel is to sort of create a sort of like dead zone around the border. And so all the red dots are the white phosphorus attacks. And everything that, and all the little homes are actually representing villages. And so what they do is that they target the villages, but they also target the land around it. And the icons of the rake and the tree represent agricultural lands and forests. And so what they do is that they try to destroy the agricultural land because it's the livelihood of the people who live in these villages. And so it's, in a way, they've noticed that destroying the villages is not really working out in the way they want it to work out, because people still have their land and they're attached to their land. But once you destroy the livelihood of these people and you poison the land, it's very hard for them to come back, which actually hasn't been the case. People came back when there was the ceasefire. But you can see here they weren't only targeting, is this a laser? Yeah. They weren't only targeting the borders, they also targeted different areas in Lebanon other than the south, and also Beirut. These are some images of Nabatieh, one of the biggest villages in the south, and you can see the extent of the destruction, which is quite strong. So yeah, this is a video of, and you can see in this video a lot of the land that has been burned and a lot of the trees that have died because of the ecocide. We also worked in the, well, while we were looking at different mapping techniques and ways to tell this, let's say, to tell what's been happening in this issue. We worked with a sound artist called Mohammed Shair, and this is a sound map of the drones that have been flying over Lebanon for the past year. And you can see the intensity that is represented by the size of the circles. And so this is a sort of also psychological warfare that has been happening, that has been and they've targeted the whole country. So as part of their efforts to destroy certain societies and people in the country. We've also worked with an illustrator and people that have been actually inhabitants of South Lebanon that have been telling the story actually of what's been going on. So this is an illustration by Od Abu Nasser that has been that actually represents or tries to illustrate the story of the destruction in southern Lebanon. And I want to mention that this is also in the book. And we worked also with Beirut Urban Lab, and just the important thing to say here is that they were mapping how healthcare facilities and educational facilities have been specifically targeted in order to dismantle the infrastructure. So. And then we move on to the last two departments, which are the departments of healing, related to healing. So this department is called the Department of Endemic Species. And the reason why it's important is because when we talk about healing, we're talking about preservation. And preserving the actual ecosystem is very important when you want to heal the land. So we've worked with Juzur Lebanon to establish a seed bank. In Lebanon, we have the highest amount of endemic species. And in the Mediterranean, we have 108 endemic species. And actually, Lebanon is used as a lab to develop studies that are then used in other countries to preserve endemic species. And one of the species that has been suffering a lot during this war is the iris, and this iris is now endangered because of the conflict. There's a beautiful illustration in the book of this iris by Amy Chignara. And so we've exhibited in Venice not only the seeds in this box, so these are all the seeds of the endemic, well, a selection of the seeds actually. And you can see actually in box number 22, there are only 2 seeds, and these are the seeds of the iris. And it's a sort of reflection on the fact that it's now endangered. And then the last department is the Department of Strategic Healing. And in this department, most of the content is actually studies that are in a textbook in the box with some illustrations. But actually, the main message here is to really say that there are ways, natural ways to heal the land, and these include things like bioremediation and phytoremediation, and you can read more about those in the book. But it's also, this department is also here to say that the land can heal itself. It's able to regenerate if we leave enough time to it to regenerate. But it also needs we also need to advocate for it, and we need to help it to regenerate. And this is the book that's exhibited in Venice. Yeah, so I want to add one more thing, actually. This paper here is actually a petition. It's a petition we've been working on with Green Southerners. And the way we thought about the pavilion is that we didn't want it to just be a space of, like an exhibit space, or just a space of reflection, but a space of activism and action. And so this petition is available online to sign. It's a petition that calls for the banning of white phosphorus in munitions and against the land, because at the moment it's only banned against human beings. But we are advocating for the fact that what's going on, well, what was going on in Lebanon is ecocide, and it needs to be recognized at the Geneva Convention. And so that's the petition. And just to finish off on a more personal note, the whole pavilion was actually built by our team, by hand, in
lack of funding.
In Italy and in Venice. All the bricks were built by hand and installed in Venice. Everything was done by actually 6 of us. And it was a very long journey. It was very tiring physically. It was exhausting. But we're very thankful to all the sponsors that actually made this happen. So the entire pavilion is funded by private individuals through the collective's private network. And here are some more actually images of the last department. And one of the main reasons we're here as well is this beautiful box designed by Natalia Elmir. And the sort of reason why we did a box and not a book is because this is an ongoing crisis. And we're thinking about the box as an archival box that is dynamic, that the message we're trying to convey is that there are ongoing issues, and this box is here to receive more and more content as this urgent crisis is developing. And everything you saw in the images and everything that is in the pavilion is actually within this box. So we have different formats of media, maps, and this actually really beautiful Laporello that are within the box. And the main, let's say, I'm sorry. All the studies I was referring to in the last department are actually in this textbook in Arabic and in English. And Yeah, I think
there's plenty of more stuff in the box to discover.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna take everything out.
But yeah, the main message is that we want to say that the land will always remember the people who protected it. And we hope that the message resonated with you and with the visitors in Venice. Thank you.
We're gonna just go for some Q&A, so don't be shy. Be the first one to break the ice and
Can I ask about the terminology, the Ecocide? Does this have to be registered with the UN, or how does this become an official?
yes, okay. So the word ecocide has started to be used in the legal world, and it actually doesn't have yet a specific definition. It's not like genocide where it's very well structured of what needs to be done to call it a genocide. Ecocide is still like almost a fresh word. So we know that its definition is the intentional destruction of nature. And in the pavilion, part of the two first departments, which are to document what we consider as ecocide, so through all the mediums and the maps, that the nature was specifically targeted for no reason, we consider that as ecocide. So we almost appropriate, like we did our own definition of what those actions were, and we call them ecocide because we saw no other reasons why nature would have been targeted the way it has been targeted in this conflict.
Can you take it further? Can you take this to the UN and say this is evidence of?
Yeah, so the petition is part of the petition that is in the pavilion is part of a bigger dossier that is being built to prove scientifically and also through the signature of people, like through public opinion, that white phosphorus should be banned because one of its main use right now is to perpetuate ecocide and damage against the environment. So if you sign it, you're doing something at your own level to, like a bigger cause. And that was something that was important for us because in Lebanon during the war, we almost felt powerless in front of what was happening, in front of the scale of the destruction that was happening. And obviously this war is in a larger context of like horrific stuff that has been happening in the region. So we didn't want to go to Venice just to like cry in a way to the world of what's going on. We wanted to call architects and people to be more active of the situation. Yes.
Sorry, first of all, thank you very much for that presentation. It certainly highlighted things that are new to me. And so I'm very grateful for you guys for raising awareness about this. As Miranda said, the word ecocide was not in my vocabulary, so thank you. My question is, you mentioned the design as the 4 elements, and to me it looks like a Christian cross.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's not deliberate. Actually, the cross is not even symmetrical. So yeah, when you go there, you can see, but it's not. It was just a way to kind of deal with the space we had that was allocated to us within the means we had.
I mean, to be completely honest, if it was up to us, the table would be longer. But it had to be so exactly to not fall into this symbolic representation. The cross is uneven, so
yeah.
It's, yes.
Just on the question of construction, actually, could you speak more about the bricks? And I suppose, first of all, why bricks? And then how did you make it and whether that featured into the whole sort of concept as well?
Yeah, sorry, I think I skipped that. I said I was going to talk about it and I didn't. Actually, when we were thinking about the pavilion, we were thinking about this idea of the soil and the soil that was poisoned. And in Lebanon, the main soil is actually called terra rossa, which is what we've used to make the bricks. We wanted to bring to Venice this kind of like tactile experience as well. And actually, if you look closer at the bricks, they're actually embedded with wheat seeds. And in a way, it's kind of symbolic, the wheat, but it's meant to represent the resilience of the land. And the reason why we chose wheat is because Lebanon is the birthplace of the DNA of wheat. So the first time in the world that wheat was domesticated was in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon 10,000 years ago. And so this is the most eaten crop in the world today, and its birthplace is Lebanon. And it's a sort of message to say that we have this attachment to the land, and historically we have an importance. Lebanon is an important place in the world when it comes to that. But the bricks were kind of a sort of experiment. We didn't really know first of all, how we were going to get to Venice, because until January we had no funds. It kind of happened as we were making the pavilion. We had a different idea and we ended up with that. So I like to tell this, I don't want to tell like a polished story of why it looks like that, because it's really not the case. And we really did experiment with them. We didn't really know how to make the bricks at first. We wanted to make this table. But at the end, after a lot of experimentation, we came up with that. And actually, I didn't make the bricks. Elias and Edouard made the bricks.
It was painful.
Yeah, it was painful.
But also, what I want to say is that usually countries appoint the curators, and the whole process starts minimum a year before the opening date. For us, 3 months from the opening date, we didn't even know if we could make it to Venice because of the war, the financial constraint, and whatsoever. And this has kind of led to the design of the pavilion, just like the box itself. Initially we envisioned another box, but because in Lebanon it was war, they stopped importing papers and cartons, so we had to change the design of the book accordingly to what was available in Lebanon. So the only guy in Lebanon that could do the binding of the book as we wanted to was in a region that was very affected by war, so we couldn't reach him. So we had to also change the binding of the book, the design of the box, the paper. So the book is also a result of the constraint that we had when we were doing that publication.
Is this on? Firstly, thanks so much for your really powerful and moving presentation. I wanted to circle back to, I found it really telling when you were referring to the World's Fair and this appeal to Mr. Ford, the billionaire at the time, and recognition of the state, I guess. And I'm curious how you think about the audience that your work is targeting, especially in Venice and in the Western World's Fair format. And what I understand is you're sort of appealing to architects and the architectural profession to engage politically, but I just wondered whether you could speak more about who you're sort of trying to reach and yeah. Thanks.
No, thank you for the question. When we were doing the concept of the pavilion, it was very important that all this ecocide and targeting of nature gets a voice, because it's not covered in mainstream media. You hear about the war, but not through the lens of the environment. You hear through numbers and statistics and stuff like that. So for us, it was really important to communicate to not only an Arab audience, but especially to a Western audience, to inform them of what is happening, for Lebanon to have a voice, to speak a message that comes from within. And actually, something surprising that happened at the Biennale is that we got a lot of people coming from different backgrounds and countries. Like, for example, we had a Vietnam delegation that came to the pavilion and told us that they are suffering till now from the problems that we are suffering from through the American Vietnam War. And they could totally relate to what we're talking about. And they said that at the time the government didn't do anything, so the problem just, got worse with time. Same for some some people from some European countries that came to say that they have the same problem in Europe from the industrial era, where land was contaminated through chemicals, but through an industrial process, so a bit differently from that. But to be honest, we got a great response from audience, and I don't know if you're aware, but there's a public program of 6 months that runs throughout the Biennale that every pavilion does, and we got invited to a lot of those panels to talk about the urgency of the message we are bringing.
No, bien.
Thank you very much for the lecture. The message was really strong, and I'm sure that message was conveyed through this room and also the people who visited the Biennale. And I think my question is a bit related to the previous one, but I was wondering how this is perceived by the people in Lebanon who are actually going through this crisis, or if there any way that they will know what you guys are doing.
I think, we worked with a lot of people who are on the ground. So, for example, the Association of Green Southerners, they're very well infiltrated in those areas. And they work with a lot of civil servants, like the firefighters. So to be honest, it's hard to say to what extent they know, to what extent do they know what has been going on in Venice. But one of the main ideas of the pavilion, I think like a lot of other pavilions, is that it goes back to Lebanon. And so we've already worked or we're in contact with different institutions and organizations to bring back the pavilion to Lebanon, but probably under a different form, not just as an exhibition space, but as something more experiential. But yeah, I think your question is very pertinent, because in the end of the day, this pavilion is for the people or for the inhabitants of those burnt lands. And one of the main goals is, once we finish Venice, is to kind of bring that back to Lebanon, to the areas that are affected and to the people that are affected. Outside of the community of architects, that go to Venice.
But also the commissioner, one of the commissioner of the project is the Order of Engineers and Architects in Lebanon, which is the equivalent of the RIBA in the UK. And we had a message for them, actually, is that before architecture, there is land. Now there is an urgency in Lebanon to rebuild. But we're telling them, before rebuilding, don't do the mistake that were done in the past. Let's take just a simple second to reflect. So for us, it was also targeting them as policymakers and decision makers in that specific field, because they were, maybe they are, but they were going to do the same thing that they have done in previous war, just rebuild as fast as possible without taking any environmental considerations.
Could you elaborate on Green Southern's part, the way they were documenting all these images? Is there any certain process? And what is next after the edition? What are we going to do next?
I'm going to start answering by the question of documentation. We actually have in the room someone from Green Southerner that is just very shyly sitting behind. So I'm sure you can have a conversation with him after, but from what we understood is that a lot of them were firefighters, and they were the only ones that, let's say, had enough courage to go on the ground when white phosphorus and remained when white phosphorus was being thrown and the fires were starting. So, it was a very dangerous job, because you didn't know what would be targeted. And actually, Usama, that Shireen mentioned in the presentation, a week before the opening, was killed in a targeted Israeli drone strike. So, it's a lot of the pictures you see here, like this one on the screen, comes from them, and they're taken with iPhone, like with the phones. They're not professional photographs, because they would go there and document as they could the destruction, or else no one would have seen what was happening. So their job was is very crucial in general. Without them, we wouldn't have all those evidence, all those images to show to the rest of the world. And I think you can answer the petition, the continuity of the petition.
Yeah, so at the moment, the petition is live, and once we close the petition, we need to sort of coordinate with the people who have raised the petition and see how it's going to fit part of this like larger dossier that Elias was mentioning, which actually a lot of people are working on. So this is really just a small drop in something that is much bigger. And we don't really have visibility right now as to where it's going exactly, but I also wanted to mention that the pavilion has a website. It's called thelandremembers.com, and there will be like frequent updates on there to kind of keep people informed. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much for such a powerful presentation, for such a really moving messaging as well that you have brought to us today. I think what I really liked is that sort of a position of you becoming a real activist for an issue that perhaps is not very commonly seen. And I think my question is around like, how would you envision beyond the petition the life of this big time issue that you're bringing to kind of move other people, other generations, and perhaps other countries as well? I think you have really put the spotlight on an issue that is not seen at all, and is particularly happening in Lebanon, but it's currently happening in other places as well. And I think it's really powerful. And what I liked as well is like, I like what you said about like land first, building next, but at the same time, there is an angle of like, should architecture then have a more active role in being generative, especially in these kind of issues? So I wanted to know a bit your thoughts about the role of our profession, first of all, and then what sort of attitude should we be starting to have? But thank you so much.
No, thank you for the question. I'm just going to say that a way of continuing this message is the box itself. So the reason why we didn't do a binded book, because it's an issue that is still ongoing, as you said. It has not been resolved, and there's much more information and research and data to be added to it. So by doing a box, you know, in the reprint edition, not that I'm not encouraging you to buy this one, but in the reprint edition, there's going to be updated information. A lot of our contributors have already asked to update their materials. They have said that they have found much more evidence on the ground. So that's a way to kind of continue the documentation work and the healing process. And I think for the rest, we have a public program that is currently being coordinated with Slow Factory, and that is really to create awareness in Lebanon, especially with university students, and to kind of promote this message that we are saying. And to have the, as I said before, to have the Order of Engineers and Architects as commissioner of the pavilion, we have started to open up the conversation with them. They obviously have the power over architecture in Lebanon. So they understood the message, and they, at the end, and they have donated money towards it because they understood the importance of it. So we believe that it's already a first positive step in having them realize how it is important, to take care of, to take those issues at heart, at least like to take the minimum of awareness of what is happening.
No, yeah, I just wanted to add that part of the way that we work is that we work with a lot of different organizations across different sectors. the public and the private. And through the last 6 months, we've built quite a big network of people that are interested in this issue, including organizations like non-governmental organizations that build temporary structures, that are involved with the state, but also involved with private individuals that have now their eyes open to this matter. And so I think there's a lot of work that can be done more on the ground rather than staying in this sort of like academia research environment that we're in now. And I think, yeah, the summer is going to be quite key to sort of explore those ideas.
But also, this is exactly the point of being at the Venice Biennale, because it's such an international platform, or else our message maybe wouldn't have come through on the global stage. So while being at the Venice Biennale, a lot of reporters, of press, came to the pavilion because of the urgency of the topic and covered it in Architecture magazine and in newspaper from all over the world. And I think this is where we used a bit the platform of the Venice Biennale to get the message around the world. So you will be seeing some articles in British television stuff, but that's for later. Follow up.
Hi, and thank you so much for the presentation. So from my understanding, like the storyline you're trying to convey is like one where like we're moving from like the people's connection to land to kind of a forced disconnection to land because of toxicity. And I was just wondering if in your research, like you came up with like specific examples in which architecture can be utilized to move away from toxicity, or ways in which like you can decontaminate the land or like contain this toxicity. Thank you.
I think the research we've come across was actually by somebody called Leila Darwish and Adib Dada, and there are different ways to decontaminate the land without using chemicals. So the main way right now to do that is to just throw more chemicals at the land. But there are many methods using fungus and using different planting strategies in order to draw out the heavy metals. For white phosphorus, it's not so straightforward, but a lot of, for example, there's a method also called bioremediation that uses natural elements that live within the ground and then propagate themselves and then absorb the heavy metals in order to detoxify the land. But to be really honest, like there isn't enough research on that now, and they are like, even at the American University in Beirut, they are doing more research on that. But as I said before, the first step now is to understand the damage and the extent of the damage of the white phosphorus on the land. And yeah, maybe Abbas can explain later a bit more. But let's say architectural intervention, I think the whole premise of the pavilion is to say that before we go there, there's another step to take. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really great. And I noticed during the presentation, you explicitly named the perpetrator, which is the Israeli entity. I wonder how obvious it was also in the pavilion, because essentially these are war crimes. And did you face any censorship? Because sometimes these spaces tend to be allergic to these kinds of discussions.
It's a very good question. I mean, we thought a lot about this when we started thinking about what we were going to do for the Biennale. It was something that was really on our radar. And to be honest, I mean, these are facts. Israel was bombing Lebanon intentionally to an extent that was never seen before, for really reasons that, I mean, I'm not going to go into the politics of it, but these are facts, and this is what happened in Lebanon, and I don't think anybody is negating that. And I think that part of the message of the pavilion is that if you have something to say, then you can just be clear about it. And we were very clear about it in Venice. I have to admit that we didn't know if we were going to be censored. So in the months leading up to submitting our proposal to the foundation of the Biennale, we were very strategic with how we sent our curatorial statement, what we were posting on social media. And I think a lot of people were a bit skeptical about the strategy, saying that, I mean, why are you hiding what's been going on? But really the main goal was to get to Venice, right? And then once you're in Venice, nobody can stop you. I mean, we've had some incidents, I have to say. We don't know if they're related to that, but the day there was an article in the National, I did an interview with the National, and it was quite political. And the next morning we went to the Arsenale to continue building the pavilion, and this box, which contains seeds, was opened and thrown on the floor, so all the seeds were mixed up. And yeah, we don't know, but like, you know, it's
the books and
it's part of, you know, it's part of it, and you just have to stand by your message and just keep going. So yeah.
I think we'll just be taking the last question before you can all have a drinks and look at the book.
I had a question about the healing portion, and I'm really interested about the indigenous knowledge portion. I was wondering how you guys facilitated that conversation in terms of gathering collective memory and indigenous memory.
So part of this pavilion was to give a voice for all the different NGOs and experts that were doing work on that. So we kind of acknowledge that we ourselves, as the curators, we don't have the right knowledge, and we're not going to pretend to have it. So we just bought all the different exhibitors that were, of course, we curated the work, we had long conversation, we made sure that they would respond to the brief, but they have bought their own knowledge, and all of that can be found in the book. It's going to look like I'm overselling the book, but it can be found in the book, and it was a great way to give them as well a voice on the international stage, because a lot of them are doing very critical work on the ground, but they don't have, let's say, the means or the network to diffuse that knowledge that they have accumulated, this very important knowledge. So through the pavilion, they managed to do that, and I think I mean, I can talk about each one of them for like half an hour, so that's why I'm going to stay a bit more general. But thank you for the question. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for.